Hi everybody, in today's video I will be having a look at applying for citizenship in Canada. Now I have to say this video we've submitted our application and we've done our citizenship test. However, our process is not complete. So this video is part one of two parts hopefully. In 2024, I think around about July, we became eligible for citizenship. The process is actually quite easy to apply. You just need to know that you've spent enough time in the country. So without further ado, let's have a look. I took some screenshots of the process. So first go to Canada.ca. I'll be looking at my computer screen during this. Okay, so you go to Canada.ca, citizenship or immigration and citizenship, and then click on citizenship and apply for citizenship. Then over there they give you the criteria you need, who can apply. You have to be a permanent resident of Canada and you have to have lived in Canada for at least the last 3 out of 5 years, which is 1,095 days. You also, as an adult, need to have filed taxes. During the application process, you'll need to pass a citizenship test. You will need to prove your language skills in either English or French, the two official languages of Canada. And then finally, if you have passed all these criteria, you'll be invited to take an oath of citizenship. Okay, you'll also see the fees over there. For adult, 18 or older, you are looking at $630. I think that does include tax. As a minor, it's only $100. Next, you can click on the button, find out if I'm eligible, and then check your eligibility. Let's just go click on that. So then I'll ask you a bunch of questions, whether you've been a permanent resident, you lived in Canada the past 5 years as a temporary resident, have you been a permanent resident at least 2 of the last 5 years, have you been outside of Canada for more than 730 days, have you ever been asked to leave Canada? Hopefully not. And then a bunch of things, whether you are criminal or been involved with overthrowing governments, things like that. And they say you might be eligible. They ask your age and what you will need. Ask you whether you've paid your taxes in the past 5 years. And then finally, if they say you probably do qualify for Canadian citizenship, you can go to the physical presence calculator. Now, I would recommend keeping track of the days you spend outside of Canada once you've immigrated here, especially if you have plans to become a citizen. It just makes things a lot easier. If all your overseas trips involve flights, it's usually not too difficult. You can just go through your email and look at old flight tickets to get the dates you spent outside of Canada. But as Canada has a very long border with the US and most of the major cities are close to this border, it's very easy to go into the States for a couple of days or a weekend, and that is a bit more difficult to keep track of if you use a car to do that. So it is best to keep a diary somewhere of the time you spent outside of Canada, especially if you do a lot of trips into the US. Just a point of interest here, if you sleep over one evening, like say I leave today, I come back tomorrow from the US, it doesn't count as a day out of Canada, since I was in Canada today and I'm back tomorrow. So it's only the full days you actually spent out of Canada. Anyway, let's go back into that. Start calculation. You say when you want to submit your application. So if you've got a rough idea when you should qualify, you can enter this date. So you enter the date you became a permanent resident. They'll ask you if you were a temporary resident in this time. Reason they ask this, your temporary residency count, you get about half a credit per day spent as a temporary resident compared to a full day when you are a permanent resident. So over here, You just answer their questions. Where you left Canada in that time, you have to say where you were. Like we went on a trip to South Africa, and I went into the US a couple of times. Just enter those dates. You also have to give them the reason, and it will tally them in that section above your list of absences and the total days you were out of the country. I'm just going to skip through this, but finally, when you are done, all of these dates, you submit it, and it will give you a nice summary of the time you've been in Canada. So in this example, my total physical presence was 1,162 days. So that's more than enough. If you consider the minimum is 1,095 days. And it's got a nice summary of the days spent outside, and the amount of credit you got as a temporary resident. You'll see over here I was in Canada for 582 days and got credit for 291 days of those. And for permanent residency, I spent 881 days in Canada. Okay, so if everything looks good and you should qualify, it's handy to print this page because it's got a nice summary of all the time you spend outside, and you're going to need to fill that in again during your application. So at this point, I would say print this page or save the page, or print it to a PDF or something. But then you are good to start your citizenship application. So it is a completely different website. There's a citizenship portal you go to actually start the application process. It's not on Canada.ca, but from that questionnaire, you can basically follow a link to the citizenship portal. And I've already obviously created an account, but you will need to create an account. Unfortunately, I messed up a bit when I did the screen recording while submitting my application. Something went wrong and I only recorded the black screen. However, I will try and talk you through it by just showing my summary page in PDF form, but I'll also explain kind of what to expect on this site. Now, when you're applying as an adult, you have to have your own application, your own login, regardless of being a group submission or not. So my wife and I had to have our own logins, and then a minor can be on an adult's profile along with them. Doesn't matter which one. Yes, so you start the application. You can then select whether it's a group application if you want to submit as a group. An invite will be sent to the other adult members of that group to their emails. And then once they create their account, they can link to the group application. So all a group application means is that the group gets processed as a whole, and until everybody submitted their applications, nothing gets done. And once everybody's applications have been reviewed, processed, and it's good to go, then everybody together is invited for the oath ceremony. Anyway, let's have a look at the site. Okay, so you log in. So here you can see myself and my child's application is over there. After you submit it, you get this acknowledgement of receipt. After you get this, you can actually track your application. Now, also important to remember, this site is only to actually submit the application. You can't track it on here. Once you've submitted, there's a whole different site you use to do the tracking. But on this site, very similar to where you check whether you're eligible or not. You have to submit most of those questions again, all the time away, all the questions about a criminal history, all of those things you have to submit. All the addresses you've stayed in the past 5 years, you have to submit. Proof of an English test, for example, you have to submit. If you did an IELTS test or any form of English test for your work permit or your PR when you came to Canada, regardless of whether it's past that 2-year expiry date, it doesn't matter. It still serves as proof that you can speak the English language. Another form of proof that you can speak English is if you have studied over here. For example, my wife did a course through a local college, and this should qualify as proof that she can speak English, especially since she passed the course with flying colors, I might add. Okay, so as I say, I can't go through the process. I did the whole process and unfortunately I messed up. You can see a whole group on there. Here's just a summary of my citizenship application. I'm not gonna, obviously I'll have to blur some, your height, your eye color, birth date, where you were born, all of those lovely things are over there. You need two forms of identification. You can use your PR card, you can use your passport, you can use your driver's license. It needs to be a photo ID. The nice thing about any application with the Canadian government or in Canada, they do not require certified copies of everything. Like South Africa, they want their hard copies and it needs to be certified. So everything through the South African embassy is super expensive due to this, but all you need is digital copies of your documents and you're good to go. Me personally, I have a folder in my Dropbox for each member of the family, so all our documents are kept nicely there and secured. And the same, everything I need for these applications, I also try and group within my cloud storage in a secure folder. So yeah, they ask you about your residence and tax and where you stayed, from when to where. You're not allowed to leave any gaps. So I even included the hotel we stayed in one evening when we arrived in Toronto, as well as the laneway, the Airbnb we stayed in for our quarantine. They want to know your tax number, when you file taxes, what your job is the last 5 or 10 years. They want to know all of that history, which you most likely had to fill in during your PR or temporary residency application. So just keep a record of that because you will need that again. Your IELTS, your physical presence gets calculated again, reasons you left. And then you need to digitally sign. They also want proof that the fees were uploaded. Here's 2 PDF files I had to upload. Now, when you actually pay for your citizenship application, you have to, again, create another profile on Canada.ca if you don't have a working one currently. And through there, via the email they send you, you can pay for your citizenship. You save the PDF, that's proof of the payment. And then you need to upload it as the last part of the application. And once everybody in the group has done and submitted everything, you can submit your group application. And then you have to wait for the acknowledgement of receipt, which basically says, yes, everything is cleared, you've submitted everything they requested, and they will now start processing your application. Yes, just a proof of payment. This is what it's going to look like. Official receipt. And you get a message to say, hello, everybody in the group has signed the application. Your group application is ready to submit. And that's when you do just that. Then you get an email which says you've successfully submitted the group's application, but this is not the acknowledgement of receipt email, as they clearly state at the top. That you get a couple of days later. We'll have a look at the timeline in a second. So eventually you get your acknowledgement of application. You will have a unique client identifier as well as your application number. Each individual has their own one. And this is basically it. As well as a link to the study guide you will need is in here as well. So yeah, they send you an email with a link to the citizenship tracker, yet another website you need to sign up to. And you can only do this once you actually have your unique client identifier after receiving the acknowledgement of receipt email. So you throw in that details, you log into your account. The last update we got in yet on hers was October 3rd, but we actually submitted, as you can see by application history, on October 1st. Now you'll see language skills, physical presence, background verification, prohibitions, all of that is showing in progress. Citizenship test not started. So this is my kids one. I suspect the kids one all lights up once the adults are done. Since my wife and I have some of ours already green, I don't think they are as strict with the kids. But let's look at my profile quickly. So you'll see over here, mine was updated November 22nd. And at this point, they were waiting on us to do the citizenship test. Now the citizenship test, they give you a 1 month window to do. Here's my window, November 29th until December 29th. It's an online test you can do, and you can only do it within this window. So don't go to the link and try and do it before this time. Here you can see citizenship test is in progress now. You'll also see November 20th, they've just added an activity, citizenship test. And then November 29th, the next update was scheduled for citizenship test. Basically just, that means the window they gave you. Now for your citizenship test, you can follow a link they've got there. And from this link, they give you study material. It's all free if you want to prepare for the test. When you actually do your test, you go to start the online test, and then you have to sign in with your unique numbers. You have to have a photo identification with you, which you'll have to hold up to your webcam in the block, take a picture of that, submit it. You'll have to put your face in one of those round circles on your screen, take a picture of that. There's not allowed to be anybody coming in or out of the room. You have to be in the room alone, not allowed to use your phone. So basically leave that outside. And then they send you an email after you do that. And then you have to sign in again. So that's like a double security measure of theirs. And only once you've signed in that second time will the test start. Once you hit start test, you will have, I think it's 45 minutes for 20 questions, multiple choice. It's not that difficult, really. If you went through the booklet, you should be fine. And you need 15 out of 20 or 75%. Now there's a lot of resources, including what they give you. Oh yes, you've got 3 chances to pass this test. So start studying. Here you've got Discover Canada. There's an audio version of this. You've got a PDF version. You can request a hard copy, a paper copy of it. The PDF is fine, that's what I used. And it's actually quite interesting. It's quite a diverse history the country has. This is just what Discover Canada, the booklet, looks like. You learn about all the different provinces, how the government structures work, and the relationship with England and the Crown. Fun fact, Canada has burned down the White House. Not everybody knows this, but yeah. You learn about their justice system, some historical figures, what they are well known for in industry. Yeah, it's really interesting to go through. I think it's about 70 pages in total. If you find these things interesting, it's not a difficult read. And you know more about the country you are staying in, which is a bonus. Now, in addition to that, just with an easy Google search, Canadian Citizenship Test, you'll find multiple resources online. There's free practice tests you can do. There are also apps you can use. You can sign up for the trial for 7 days and cancel it if you don't want to pay the $6 for a month. Or you can just pay the $6 for a month and use it in full without any ads. You can actually study using one of these apps that I'll put on there, and I found that was quite helpful. It's an easy way going through it, and they've got questions after each segment to test your knowledge. So yeah, this is basically what the test will look like if you go to one of these sites. Let me just show you. Take a sample test, blah, blah, blah. There'll be some ads. I'm gonna get this one wrong. But this is very similar to what the test will look like as well. You can go back to some of the questions if you wish here in the test. And the nice thing about most of these study sites and mock tests, whether you get it right or wrong, they add a little explanation underneath the answer. So even if you get it wrong over here, it's a good way of learning because they show you the right answer afterwards. So just working through the questions is another good way of learning things, but I would still recommend scanning through it. Yeah, and then before I actually did my test, the next update came that on November 26th, what was it? Yeah, November 26th, showing my background verification is now complete. And we are still waiting on the citizenship test. So yeah, December 10th was my next update. I actually did my citizenship test the 29th, so the first day I could do it, I did do it. The morning I passed it, I got one wrong, so I got 19 out of 20. Damn. My wife nailed it, she got 20 out of 20 the next day. So we finished it like a day or two within the window, the 29th and 30th of November respectively. And December 10th was our next update on the citizenship application. So now you can see background verification is complete, as well as the citizenship test. So now we are waiting on the rest. The only things that still need to go green is language, the physical presence, as well as prohibitions. Now I can't see a problem with any of these three potentially prohibitions, and by that I mean a police clearance. If the last 3 years or the last 5 years you have been in Canada, you do not necessarily have to have a police clearance from your home country. That is part of the reason that I waited until after the 16th of September to submit, to make sure that window doesn't fall in the time just before we left South Africa. Just in case they say, okay, in the past 3 years you were in South Africa for 2 days, so we want a police clearance certificate. I'm hoping this helps avoid that, because it is a pain to get a police clearance certificate from South Africa. It's not quick, it's not cheap, and it will definitely delay our process. But that's the only hiccup I can foresee in our application. Our last police clearance we did was 2022, when we applied for permanent residency. We had to get new police clearance certificates. Yeah, the next part is more applicable to South Africans wanting to have dual citizenship. Some countries allow dual citizenship, others don't. I believe countries like India do not, but you don't completely lose. You get a special card proving that you are still, or that you are from India. So if you want to reinstate your Indian citizenship, there is a way, but it is sort of not a PR card, but just sort of a proof of being born there card they give you. I'll pop up the name over there, what they call it in India. One of my colleagues has one of those. And for South Africa, we can have dual citizenship, and it is important to get your, what do they call it? So it's called the retention of South African citizenship. It only costs $23 to apply for. It takes about a month to get. And that timeline is accurate. It took us a month to get it. You have to have this document before you take the oath of citizenship. If you take your oath before having this document, you will lose your South African citizenship. Also of interest, only adults or over 18s need to get this document. Minors do not need it. They automatically get their dual citizenship. Also, when said minor becomes an adult, they do not need to apply for this document. So it's kind of weird that the adults have to do it, but it's the way it is. There are 2 forms you need to fill out, and then you need copies of your South African ID book or passport. Luckily it's or and not and, because I lost my South African ID book and I'm still waiting on that video coming. You need a certified copy of your South African birth certificate. Again, keep those documents. You need a certified copy of your Canadian PR card. You need a notarized sworn affidavit that no other citizenship was taken, and then a money order needs to be sent along with a return envelope to the South African High Commission in Ottawa or the Consulate General in Toronto. Those are basically our two offices in Canada, so nothing in Vancouver, unfortunately. The nice thing, if you can actually go there in person, if you need fingerprints or you need to certify something, you can do it there for free. Anybody staying in Canada would know it's bloody expensive to certify things here, where it's free back in South Africa. So yes, get that document if you wish to have dual citizenship as a South African. And then lastly, I'll probably mention this in part 2 of this video once we get our citizenship. But when you take the oath of citizenship, you are no longer a permanent resident of South Africa. Your permanent resident card gets the snip and you are now a Canadian citizen without a Canadian passport at that stage. So it's very important to apply for your Canadian passport soon after becoming a citizen, so you don't accidentally, let's say, cross over into the United States with your car thinking you're good to go because you've got a US visa. So there you go, into the States, and now you want to come back into Canada, but you've got no documentation that accompanies an entry into Canada. You don't have a visa, a visitor's visa, you don't have a work permit that's valid, you don't have a PR document, you just got a South African passport. So you can't cross through the border into Canada. You can go into the States with a visitor's visa, but you can't get back into Canada. So be careful during that period after taking the oath. If you are from a country that needs a visa to get into Canada, be careful not to cross the border before you've got your Canadian passport and can easily re-enter. I'm not sure how it will work. I'm pretty sure you won't just get deported as a Canadian citizen, but it will definitely make life difficult for yourself. So bear that in mind. Anyway, for now, that is it. I really hope within the next month or two, so somewhere in January, start of February, we will have good news on the citizenship application and that we can apply for our Canadian passports. It will definitely make visiting South Africa easier as well, as we can go out of the airports in Europe without needing special visas. But yes, stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for watching. I really hope this helps somebody that's going through the same process. I'll post my timelines down in the description. Have a lovely day and a happy new year. Cheers.